Okay, Lauren and Renee, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. I'm so glad to have you on.
We're
Thanks for
so
having us.
glad to be here. Thank you.
Totally. You've got a unique story, both of you. You're also sisters, which is amazing, and you're both in the health space, which is also super cool. But I believe, Lauren, you come from a opera background, like an acting background. Is that true?
Oh, Broadway. Yeah, musical
Broadway.
theater. Renee and I both grew up dancing, and then that was my career before what I'm doing now.
Okay, awesome. And Renee, so let's get into, I guess I have a couple of things I want to get into and tease out from your background. But first, to start it all off, it was your father, right? That was the original biohacker. I had the chance to talk to him, I think a year or two ago, and we were just engrossed in conversation for 10 minutes. And I'm going, how does he know so much about biohacking? He's not my age. He's, 60s or even beyond. And I'm going, he knows way
Beyond.
too much. So what's going on? And then I think I spoke to Lauren and she goes, oh, he's the OG biohacker. And I go, huh, there were OG biohackers back in the day. So would you like to get thicker, fuller, and stronger hair? Then make sure to check out fullyvital.com. The teams come up with fantastic and natural products that help rejuvenate your hair, but also delay and reverse gray hairs. So if you're interested in better hair, go to fullyvital.com and use the code anti-aging hacks for 15% off your order. Are you enjoying the shows on this channel? Then please make sure to hit the subscribe button down below so you can get notified when we release new episodes. Our goal with this show is to help you and give you practical tips that you can use to slow down and reverse your aging so you can live and feel younger and live your best life. With that said, let's get on with the show. So please tell us about, or tell the listeners about your father and how he was a big influence in what you guys do to get today and how you stay healthy and help others.
So probably a lot of people are fighting for that title of OG, and we're biased, of course. He's our dad, but I think he's the smartest person that I've ever met. And when we were growing up in the 80s, he was always experimenting and had some crazy, weird devices. At least that's what we thought they were when we were young kids. He was using low-level laser, PEMF devices. He always had like interesting and different kind of experimentation going on. My dad was very, very curious. He was a dentist in the 80s, and now he's a holistic biological dentist. So he specializes in mercury amalgam removals and in sleep apnea, so airway disorders. And Renee's worked for him, so she can really speak so well to what we glean from looking at the oral microbiome, at oral health, at jaw structure and airways. But basically, I think what the takeaway was when we were kids, we learned that there was a curiosity mindset and also like a little bit of healthy skepticism. Looking at the mainstream medical model, my dad was never going to take no for an answer, right? If he came up against a wall, it was like, no, we're going to try something else. We're going to do N of one experimentation, which I don't think anybody was talking about then, but my dad was doing it. I'm going to try this. I'm going to see how my body feels. And then I'm going to have some answers, and then I'm going to make a choice. And so we kind of learned that process of experimentation, now what we call biohacking today. So it just was kind of ingrained at such an early point in our lives.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Can
then,
I share
yeah, of course,
I think
of
this is a
course.
really important story of how our dad even got into that. So if we go
Hmm.
way back, he graduated dental school in the late 70s. He's doing the typical traditional dentistry, drilling, filling, fluoride, mercury, root canals, all the things you learn in dental school.
Right.
And in 1985, his best friend was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma, given 3 to 6 months to live. They said, go home, get your papers in order. We can't even treat the cancer at this point. It's too far gone. And this tough Italian guy says, yeah, screw you, doctors. I'm going to find a way to live. From the East Coast, he flies out to California to this holistic cancer clinic, the Livingston Wheeler Clinic that doesn't even exist today. And he goes in there and they say, open your mouth. All the metal has to come out before we can treat your cancer. And in 1985, he flies back to my dad and says, the heck are they talking about? What does the metal in my mouth have to do with my cancer? And my dad even said, I have no idea. I mean, there's silver, there's mercury. I don't know what the connection is. The light bulb went off and he said, I have to look further at this. And this is, pre-internet. So he's looking through
Hmm.
whatever books and
Right.
library research, anything he can find. He discovers Dr. Hal Huggins in Colorado, who was doing a lot of the research at the time, and discovers obviously that mercury is very toxic, and putting it in a filling doesn't make it any less toxic. From that point on, I think 1986, he stopped placing mercury fillings. And then 10 years later, similar thing happened with root canals, discovered root canals are really toxic to the body. We're leaving this dead tooth in there, and all this anaerobic bacteria is getting into the body. And he says, haha, but today we have lasers, we have ozone. We can treat this. We can do root canal. We can do a biological root canal. And so he starts doing it and biohacking them, and he discovers it's still not working. It's still leaching toxic bacteria into the body. And so I think by 2001, he stopped doing root canals altogether. So through his career, he kept saying, like, I can do this differently, a holistic way, but really realizing that we can't mess with the mouth. We can't be putting toxic materials in there. And then I came to work for his practice in 2011. I started doing nutrition coaching with his patients, and that was very eye-opening to me because I started seeing, wow, when you do traumatic things to the mouth, it impacts the rest of the body. When we have things going on in the body, it impacts the mouth. So seeing this like two-way system was really eye-opening for me and really taught me the holistic approach. But anyways, my point of saying that is just his curiosity started that path, and then we grew up with that, and here we are
And
today.
share what happened to his friend.
Oh my gosh, the best part of the story. He's still alive today. He's still alive today. He's a multi-millionaire running several companies, thriving. He's been cancer-free since 1987 or 1987. All from that.
So that's fantastic. Great backstory about your dad and the influence that he's had on you. Now let's talk about the both of you. How did you come into health coaching? I looked up your profiles. You've got endless amounts of certifications and all the things you've done in health and wellness. And so how did you decide to become a health coach? What prompted you to come into this direction? And what are you seeing right now that's giving you hope in terms of getting people on the right path with living a healthy life?
Yeah. Well, so we both did, we had different paths. So I went to New York for college to become a dancer, and I did start my dance and performance career. And alongside that, I wanted to get a gym membership, keep my body healthy, prevent injury. And someone at the gym was like, "Hey, you want to be a personal trainer?" I was like, "No, sure. If it gives me a free gym membership, I'm on board." And yeah, so I became a personal trainer, and that curiosity mindset set in. And a lot of people in this space who just can't help but gather more certifications and keep learning, because it's so exciting when you start learning about physiology. Oh my gosh, it kind of never ends. So the personal training then turned into more curiosity about health coaching, because I realized that my clients were not getting better simply by doing movement and exercise. It's a huge piece of the puzzle. And also I experienced some burnout because I was living the New York City rat race. I was training at 5 a.m. and then I was rehearsing for Broadway shows, performing until 11 p.m., not getting any sleep, burnout. And so I had to enact my own biohacking experiments. I became vegetarian because I fell into this trap of animal welfare, really being kind to animals, but also being kind to our bodies. I lost all of my energy and mitochondrial function. I was sick, tired, injured all the time. So I actually say that was kind of my first foray into biohacking. Let me try meat again and see what happens. I truly came back to life. So it was just sort of experimentation over time. And then the health coaching always preceded that. It was a curiosity to help other people do that as well. And we came back together because Renee and I ended up doing the same thing, but she has a slightly different path in getting there.
Yeah, so Lauren went to New York. I said, I'm going to Florida. I'm going to the Sunshine State, study international business, which I thought was my dream. Graduated, got my dream job. And 2 weeks later, I said, I hate this.
I don't want to. 2 weeks into it.
2 weeks. 2 weeks in.
Wow. People spend 10 years, 30 years into their career saying, I hate it every day.
I know. I'm somewhat, I guess I'm fortunate that I realized early on that this wasn't the career for me. But it seemed a little dramatic to be quitting my dream job so fast. But at the time, I was pretty upset because I thought this is what I wanted to do forever. And it's clearly not fitting into my life. And so I went to my parents. I said, what do you think I should do? And my dad said, what is your Friday night essence? And I had never heard this before. And it's the idea of on a Friday night, if you're not out with friends and family doing whatever, like if you're just home relaxing, what are you doing? And I said, I'm reading nutrition books. I had stacks of nutrition books on my nightstand, just reading for fun and curiosity. And my dad said, that's what you need to do. You got to go back to school. So went back, got my master's in nutrition. And even through that, like learning all of that, I had my own health struggles. I got mono in 2007. And it completely changed my life. Some people get mono and it's like a little cough and they move on. I mean, I was like in bed for 6 months. I just like the chronic fatigue was debilitating. I was sleeping 13, 14 hours a night. Really couldn't function. So that started my health journey of discovering Epstein-Barr virus. I had mercury toxicity, poor lifestyle. I mean, my circadian rhythm was just totally off. Mala Eastman would have been so disappointed with me at the time. Hypoglycemic, wasn't eating well, over exercising, under eating, doing all the things. But all of that served a purpose, right? All of that taught me, to get me to where I am today. And really what I discovered that I try to help clients with is that we're all different, right? We're all bio-individual. And that's why I think the three of us love biohacking, right? It considers that we're all different. We need to be doing a different diet, different exercise, different sleep routine, all the things. And I hope that what I have learned is inspiring to people to then seek the answers that they need for themselves. Don't say, I'm just going to do what Renee did, because it might not work for you. But I hope I can empower you to discover what your body needs to overcome any health challenges.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, the only follow-up question I have for you, Renee, is what were you doing not going out on a Friday night in your 20s, which I don't understand. Why were you sitting reading nutrition books on a Friday evening? But that's besides the point.
Yeah. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I still went out plenty. Don't you worry.
She made up for it.
Okay, she's going out Monday to Thursday and then taking a break on Friday.
Maybe it was more of a Thursday night essence. I don't know.
There we go. Okay, got it. So I want to touch base. Let's get into some of the top mistakes you see people making that are coming into your practice or that are contacting you for help, because health information is confusing. There's so much information out there. There's so many channels out there, so many individuals talking about stuff, doctors saying stuff that is now being proven to not be true after decades of us believing it to be true. The food pyramid is changing. And so in the middle of all of these, I wouldn't want to say misinformation, but conflicting information, what mistakes do you see people making? What are the top ones where you say, okay, here's the shift you need to make to actually get to better health?
Yeah. So I would say kind of the top things we see are really just based on having so much access. Like clients are more educated than ever. I think as practitioners, we have to stay 10 steps ahead always, because people are coming with a lot of knowledge. I heard this on this podcast. I read it from this person. I took this course. 20 years ago, those were only practitioners, but now the clients are very educated. So sort of just like some big things that I see across the board would be not using data to our advantage. And for biohackers, that's kind of a moot point because we're all steeped in the data. But I still think there's a lot of people that are afraid of data because it's overwhelming, right? And there's not a lot of context or explanation on how to use it. We can go into that a little bit more, but and then the contrast of that is only using data. So not relying on your intuitive capacity, using subjective feedback, like letting the data dictate how your day runs and the choices that you make. Third would be jumping to functional testing. I think this is a huge mistake, especially in the functional medicine world. Jumping to these big functional tests that really are not clinically validated. I think they're useful and I think they're getting better, but we shouldn't start there. What's next? You want to jump in, Renee?
Yeah, 4 would be not personalizing your supplements. And I think especially with, Instagram influencers and all the information, it's easy to just want to grab every supplement off the store shelf, but it really has to be personal. And then number 5 is eating the same foods every day of the week, all year long. I think,
the rest of your life,
average American, it's easy to just eat the same 12 foods. Don't get me wrong. That is the easy way to go, but it's not going to lead to optimal health.
Okay, I want to double click into each of those because they're very intriguing. Number 1, you talked about not using data to our advantage, and this is growing. We're seeing a growing trend of people using the Oura Ring or other tools that are available and that are not too expensive either to get more data back. Now, what are your top tools? If I was looking at this and not knowing a lot about, what are the best things I can do? Because again, there's so much conflicting information. What are the top 3 to 5 tools that collect data for you, hopefully passively, that you love using and you love recommending to your clients?
My top 2, because then the third one's going to compete amongst a whole host of others. But top 2 would be Oura Ring. We've tried a lot of things, but we just keep coming back to Oura because I think it just has such a comprehensive approach to looking at recovery. And then wearing a CGM, continuous glucose monitor. We think that everyone should wear one at least once in your life, even if you are not diabetic or pre-diabetic, or even if your blood work looks flawless, but we know that's a snapshot in time. It's not going to show the patterns and trends and the behaviors of your glucose metabolism. So those are always my top two. I'm like, everybody's got to do that at least once, I think. What would you add, Renee?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with those being the top. And would you say that most of your listeners probably have an Oura ring or some kind of recovery tracker?
A lot of listeners do.
Yeah.
CGMs are just getting into, not so much yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, to go a little bit deeper with the Oura ring, I know you talk a lot about sleep optimization on the show. I think that's such a missing piece still for people. They think, oh, I sleep fine. I'm sleeping 8 hours, but really they're in bed for 8 hours and they're only sleeping maybe 6 hours or something. It's poor quality sleep. So, we love saying you can't hack what you don't track. So what does your sleep look like? What does your recovery look like? People are still over exercising. They're not looking at their heart rate variability and saying, am I ready to go do that CrossFit workout today? So I think that's huge. And then the CGM, I'm a huge proponent of it because I always say, like, on the typical blood work, I look perfect as far as metabolic health. My A1C, my fasting glucose, like, beautiful. But the CGM, I have learned so much. I mean, quote unquote, healthy foods that spike my blood sugar off the chart. I mean, if I didn't see that on a CGM, I would never know. And then also getting into the lifestyle factors, like how stress, sleep, even like hormesis or hormetic stressors like the sauna, cold plunge, seeing how those impact blood sugar. And then what is your blood sugar doing when you're sleeping? Because even if you're finger pricking all day long, that's great. You're going to have a lot of Band-Aids on your finger by the end of the day. But what is your glucose doing while you're sleeping? We can see a lot from that data. Because if your body is in a stressed out state, whether maybe it's hypoglycemic in the middle of the night and then you're releasing cortisol, maybe you're waking up and thinking, oh, I have to pee. Maybe you're sleeping through it, but then you're waking up unrefreshed because really your body has been working the whole night.
Okay.
I just want to add one more thing about the Oura ring, and maybe this is not new to your users, but some of the data we're not actually using, like blood oxygen saturation. I know that's kind of a newer feature, but I have a ton of clients with weight loss resistance or just have terrible energy, and they're not using that metric to then expand. And I'm bringing this up because of where we started the conversation with my dad. This gets into the issue of oxygenation and respiration. What is hindering you from getting good oxygenation through the night? Do you have a narrow airway? Do you have a tongue tie? Is there something structurally in your nasal passages or your skull? And, we could be optimizing time, like efficiency of sleep, but if we're not looking at that oxygenation, we could be beating our heads against the wall for the longest time when it comes to energy, weight loss, mental health disorders like anxiety, depression. There's a lot to dig into there.
Yeah, those are all really interesting. And I'm sure all of us have a personal anecdote when it comes to continuous glucose monitors. Mine was, my Saturday morning routine used to be I'll go to Starbucks once a week. And what am I going to get? Not a caramel macchiato. I'm just going to get an Americano with hazelnut. And not even like the largest size, right? Just medium size. But I was wearing a CGM. I took that drink. I'm like, it's got nothing really, just, hazelnut. And I took a sip and I think my glucose went up 50 points from that. And I go, what the hell is going on? This is unbelievable. So again,
do you remember how you felt in that moment?
I felt, oh, meaning like this was after when I saw it after maybe an hour later. I felt really bad about my glucose spike. I felt super happy because of the sugar in my system. I was just flying on a cloud nine. I'm like, oh, it feels so good. It tastes so good. But here's the impact that it had on my life. I've never had that stupid drink ever since that time, right? It's like the small changes that you incur, that you see in your life as a result of seeing data, it really makes a big difference because just taking that out and other things that I've seen spike my blood sugar give me so much better returns over the long term as opposed to just, at one time.
You can't unsee that stuff.
You can't unsee it. Once you see it, it's like done. I've stopped going to Starbucks. I'm like, okay, no more.
Moving on.
Yeah, lattes, like, well, I think any of like the drinkable sugars are just so problematic.
Yeah, because they break down immediately in the bloodstream. Okay, so the next one is using only data. So there's obviously in the biohacking world, we love buying gadgets, right? We love to buy the next tool and we love it, and they cost. The money adds up too, but sometimes I wonder if it's just for Instagram flexes or what's actually going
Ooh,
on, right? But
maybe.
there's a lot of tools that are available now, and certainly there's data behind a lot of them. They're not just foo-foo. But how does somebody kind of balance that to the point you were making is how do you actually feel as opposed to what the data is telling you? So how do
Mhm.
you work with your clients on balancing those two aspects where you meet maybe in the middle or you skew to one side? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's as soon as you get a piece of data, the question is, how do you feel? That is the first step into tying this back to our intuition and listening to the feedback of the body, because our bodies are feedback machines. We've just been conditioned to not listen to them for X, Y, and Z reasons over time. But we're very out of tune with our physiological symptoms and signs. We've quieted that. And I don't know if that comes from childhood conditioning around, someone asks you if you're okay and you say, yep, I'm good, right? Like we don't talk about how we feel,
Yeah.
and we're just busy. Everyone is so busy. We don't slow down to listen and go, how did I feel after that single shot of hazelnut? And you probably felt good because it was a little
Oh,
sugar
great.
high, a little dopamine hit. You don't think that, oh, maybe I'm going to feel like crap later because my glucose is going to drop. So the question is always, how do you feel?
Hmm. So if you're feeling
Do
super high and, I don't know if there's a sugary feeling, but if you're feeling super high and super good, flying on cloud nine, then it's probably, and it's not normal for you, then it's probably the food that's doing something, yeah?
Yeah,
Or
I
or
would
something
say,
else that's doing something.
yeah, if the behavior is I'm reaching for this to feel better or to feel energy, that's already a sign that there's probably a disruption in your glucose metabolism. But then we put the CGM on and it's like, oh, you're right. I did feel like a little shaky there, or I did like feel a little anxiety, or I was a real a-hole to my partner at that time, right? We can start making these
Yeah.
correlations. And then our recommendation is, can you cycle off of these things? I think, especially in the biohacking space, maybe there's a little addiction to the data stuff. Great, because we reveal so many blind spots. But I think we should be training. I call it like training for the off season. Can you train to not need these things anymore? What happens when you take off your Oura ring and you wake up? Are you like, oh God, I don't know what to do with my day because I didn't get a score this morning? Or I don't know what my glucose is doing, so I guess I can eat anything. No, we want to train to then have our bodies give us that feedback. So you know what it feels like to have high blood sugar. You know what it feels like to have low blood sugar. You know what it feels like when your HRV is diminished, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I,
And I
what's, sorry to interrupt.
go ahead.
What's interesting for me is that I was never the person to listen to my body, right? I was an athlete my whole life, played soccer growing up, and I was just like, yeah, let's go. And in our 20s, we're seeking the sensory experiences outside of us. So we
Mm-hmm.
want the music, we want the lights, we want the foods, we want the fancy dinners, we want everything to be surprised by the world because there's a lot of richness in the world. And then when I started meditating, and you had to go really, really quiet on the inside, then you can start to make little shifts of, oh, I don't feel this because now I've started listening to my body. So that was the biggest one for me,
Yeah.
is sitting in silence and meditating. For you, it's probably different because you're in your body the whole day, right? With the dancing and whatnot. So maybe you're more attuned to your body giving you feedback. I don't
Even
know
that
what
could
it's
be a
like for you.
distraction, though. I think there's so much value, like you said, in just sitting still. Like, what happens when we're not doing? Renee and I talk all the time about how we need to have more being and less doing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
meditation is a being.
totally. And Renee, were you saying
Yeah.
something? I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Um, forget what I was gonna say. Oh, I think just going the other direction. Instead of looking at your data and saying, how do I feel? Before you check your data, how do I feel? Then looking
Uh,
at the data. I think playing with both ways, and especially for like the Aura ring, that's a great example. If you are syncing it in the morning, how do you feel before you check it? And then
mhm.
does it resonate? But there's also different personalities with the data, right?
How
If
so?
We're very different on this
we're
one.
very
Yeah.
different.
Okay,
If I
explain
see
more.
if I see a 60 readiness, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of bummed, but okay, what did I do yesterday or the day before that maybe impacted that? What can I do today to raise my score by tomorrow? Right. I'm like a little bit more optimistic with the data
Yeah,
versus I think some biohackers are like, oh, 60. I knew it. Today is going to be a bad day and I might as well just not even do anything. Like, I'm not saying Lauren is that
Yeah.
way, but I think some people can go more negative with
I see.
it.
Yeah.
So learn your personality around the data. Is it empowering? Or is it causing actually more negative thought cycles for you?
Yeah. I'm definitely the more negative. I don't know if my inner dialogue is that crappy. But
yeah, exaggerating.
If I see a bad score, I immediately feel it. Like the information translates into my physiology so powerfully. You know, when
Wow.
you like watch something that's kind of gross, like I don't know if medical stuff like blood freaks you out and you like feel it in your heart, you know, the physiological
Yeah.
transfer. I feel that when I see data. So I think it's important knowing, like Renee knows she can check it no matter what. I know if I'm suspicious, I'm not going to check it because it's not going to make me feel good.
I love that. I love that because people have been talking about that as well. And you got to know yourself, right? If it's going to mess up your day, then don't even look at it. And maybe the
Yeah,
next day when you have good sleep, then you're like, okay, now I can look back a day later and see what
totally.
happened over there.
Yeah.
And at some point, I've even heard of some people that are now not wearing the Oura ring every night because they've become so attuned to their bodies. And that is maybe that's a lesson that we can learn in our lives as well is yes, the data is important, but more attunement as we're talking about, more feedback and getting back to who you are and the inner silence that you have going on. And your body's always communicating with you. Are you listening or
Mm-hmm.
not? That's a different question, right? Now let's talk about the third mistake that you see people making in the health optimization space. And you talked about jumping to fancy or expensive functional testing right away, not doing other things first. So what might those other things or baby steps be before you spend $2,000 on a test or a broad array of tests that would cost you more than $2,000?
Yeah, I mean, we like the fancy tests, things like the
Yeah.
Dutch test, oat test, stool test, but they stool tests in particular just haven't been clinically validated over enough years for them to we don't know how accurate they are, you know, and we've
Mhm.
tested them. I know Renee has had clients that have taken stool tests on 2 subsequent days and completely different results. So the point of
Wow.
that is blood chemistry is just such a fabulous tool. And I think you interviewed someone that spoke about this previously, but that's where we start with our clients because you can glean so much about lifestyle and daily habits in your blood chemistry. And as your listeners probably know, we're looking at wide ranges based on a sick population. So we want to not only zoom in to more functional ranges, but we also want to look at it as kind of like a puzzle. We can start to put the puzzle pieces together and understand these patterns and trends. And I find there's a ton of behavioral stuff that we have to address before we can jump to the bigger test. You know, a stool test isn't going to be very helpful if there's fungal overgrowth, if your digestion's not working, or if there's just gross inflammation in the body, or if you're eating crap food. We have to address those basic foundational things first. And I just go to town on the blood chemistry. I love it so much. I find there's just so much we can gather from that. So starting there, and then if it's still needed to branch out into these more expensive fancy tests. I just think it's a disservice to start across the board unless someone is, you know, a true biohacker and they're like, I want to test all the things. Money is not a concern at all. I just want all the information. Great. But I don't think that the average person needs to start there. It's just
Mhm.
my opinion.
Okay, what might be your one or two or three top tests that you would recommend, including the blood chemistry you're talking about? What would that, I don't know if there's a little ladder you go up, but if somebody came to you and they're having the normal, typical issues that people come to you for, let's say, what might be one or two things you start with and then say, okay, let's hold off on the bigger stuff till later?
Honestly, sometimes just doing a fuller blood chemistry panel, but
Mhm.
adding some things because physicians often don't add some of the better metabolic markers, like looking at fasting insulin or looking at something like glycomark in particular that's in reference to glucose. Thyroid panel. You know, a lot of
Yeah,
people are just
love
looking at
that one.
TSH, not looking at all of the hormones and the conversions and the antibodies and the reverse T3, maybe selenium and iodine if that applies. So I would just say beefing up the blood chemistry. So we can take
Okay.
what your doctor ran, but add all these other crucial markers. Zinc is a really great one that I find most doctors don't add. And
Mhm.
then I think common between Renee and I, we love the Dutch test. So for any female that's struggling with weight loss resistance, with hormonal dysfunction, energy, sleep issues, the Dutch test is often quite revealing. Or if you have any history in your family, particularly of breast cancer or just any hormone dominant disorders like an estrogen dominance, PCOS, endometriosis can be really helpful.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those tests make a lot of sense to me for the hair wellness stuff that we do. We love the thyroid full panel thyroid test and the full panel iron with TIBC. So
Oh,
those,
yes. And ferritin.
Ferritin, yeah, those tell us a lot about what's going on for the hair, but of course, all the things, Dutch test, I love that one as well. So, highly recommend that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, the fourth mistake that you see people making, and this one will be not personalizing your supplement. Now, it's interesting that we know that the soil has been degrading. Soil quality has been degrading because there's mass agriculture going on. There's pesticides being sprayed on the
Mm-hmm.
soil. I agree with all of that. And people are being sold on taking 100 supplements a day. And maybe for the folks that want to live a very, very long life, that makes sense. Totally. They've done the research and they can afford them. Totally. That's fine. But how should the average person that wants to be optimized in their health, but not go too crazy, think about personalizing their supplements?
I think always starting with the basics. I know there's some debate about a multivitamin, but I am a big fan of a multivitamin if it's a good quality one, of course.
Yeah.
Because like you said, the soil is depleted. We're just not getting it from our diet. So I always think starting there, potentially some kind of fish oil, of course, high quality. We're not getting enough omega-3s in our diet. And then from there, blood chemistry, doing that and seeing, vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, things like that. And then maybe you are continuing on with like a GI map or a Dutch test to then see what else you need, because a lot of the supplements could do potentially more harm. Even like I hear this all the time. Oh, take this because we all have high cortisol. Like, do
Mm.
Yeah.
you know that you have high cortisol?
And
Or
at
you
what
just
point in
assume
the
it?
day? Yeah.
Yeah, what point of the
What point of
day?
the
How long has it been like that? Is it actually low now? Like there's so many factors, and potentially if you have low cortisol and you're taking what someone said on Instagram to take for high cortisol, you could do more damage. That's just one example. And
Mhm.
I actually had a client, this was about 10 years ago when MTHFR was getting a lot of attention. And he went to a functional medicine practitioner and was like, oh, MTHFR, here, take your methylated B12 and folate. And he got very, very sick. He was taking such high doses, he started overmethylating. He started releasing tons of mercury into his body
Oh,
and
wow.
became really sick. And so, again, just another example of how just hearing one gene, right?
Yeah.
One gene
Yeah.
to take this one supplement. But I think if you don't know what you're doing, like I said, start with the basics, then get a health coach or a health practitioner or functional medicine practitioner that can fine tune your supplements. And then, of course, the anti-aging space, there's so many fun things we can be taking.
Yeah.
But I think we all also have to be concerned about how many capsules we're taking. Like what is actually happening in the gut with all of these, even vegetable capsules. And when I first started
Yeah.
training with this, I was doing a lot of muscle testing. And the way we would do the muscle testing is, we would test different points, energy points on the body and say, does the supplement work? Does it not work? How much do we need? How little do we need? But then we would always go back and test the kidneys. At some point, you would hit a certain number of bottles, 4, 5, 6 bottles of supplements, where the kidneys would say, too much, too much.
Mm.
And so I think you got to look at that, like energetically, how much can we really be taking in a day? And then the capsule junk that's ending up in our gut
Yeah.
is another concern.
Yeah. I'm a
So,
supplement junkie. I'm like, let me try all the things for longevity. But I do see a lot of clients coming in with these cool stacks for longevity. But
mhm.
again, they haven't done the basics. And we look at their blood chemistry and see that their digestion is off. They have dysfunctional digestive capacity and they have low stomach acid. So are you even absorbing anything that you're taking? You could be spending hundreds of dollars and you're not actually reaping the benefits from any of that stuff.
Yeah, very good points. And I can't wait for us to get to the place where we have real-time monitoring, where you wake up in
Yeah.
the morning, you go to your mirror, and the mirror is scanning your eyeballs and saying, okay, they look a little bit yellow, something's going on. Let's do a full body scan. And again, for some
Yeah.
people, this is going to sound crazy, but there's nanobots in your body where they're like, okay, we got a problem in this blood vessel. Let's go clean it up, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
and
we're
then
gonna,
you go pee in the toilet and the toilet senses what's
oh
going
yeah,
on in
exactly.
your urine and then it tells you
Yeah.
that.
It does your
Oh
stool
my
analysis real time. It's like, something's off here. We got to eat this. And they give you real time foods, right? Eat this today. This is your diet. And by the way, the
Yeah.
fridge orders everything. It's delivered,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
ready to
Now we're
go.
talking.
Now
Yeah.
we're
I'm
talking. So
like,
you're fully optimized. Your brain's turned
yeah,
on the whole time. Now again, this is not going to happen before Elon Musk does the Neuralink thing. So you
right.
might have to get that injected into your brain first, so you're not put out to pasture. Again, lots and lots of things to think about. but
Yeah.
we're gonna get there at some point. It's just not gonna be in the short term. And this is what the goal with longevity is. I think the areas that are getting a lot of money, and scientists now talk about it is a money issue, right? The more funding we can get and the more smart people we can get to solve the aging problem, all the other things will fall away, especially
Mm.
diseases that are associated with aging, like the cancers and the heart disease and the diabetes that takes, 20 years to kind of manifest in your body, really. So all of it's
Yeah.
coming. It's going to be fun, but
Yeah.
until
And
that's figured out,
a little
we gotta.
scary. Like, I'm equally excited and also like, oh my gosh, what is this going to do to our brains? Like, will it be so much that we can't actually critically think anymore? Or, of course, like
Mm.
the end goal is that this technology is accurate. But just to come back to the blood chemistry for a second, we also could zoom into the blood chemistry and go, oh my God, this is out of balance. I got to supplement with this now. There are a lot of biomarkers that I think are kind of wait and watch biomarkers because our body has natural healing abilities and our bodies are dynamic. And this snapshot in time, your body may already be taking care of it. So a lot of times you may see like,
Right.
oh my God, I'm deficient in that. I got to start taking it every single day, or something like vitamin D, which we know down regulates, at least the vitamin D that we test on lab tests usually down regulates under the presence of inflammation. So is the
Mhm.
answer to always take way more vitamin D? No, I think we should figure out why there's inflammation. I think increasing our vitamin D levels will most likely help with the inflammation, but it's still not the answer. So sometimes,
Right.
and that happens with thyroid too, do we take a medication right away, or do we give it the nutrients? Do we get curious about what's throwing it out of balance, or do we just go ahead and medicate it because we see on this day it was out of range? So we had to
Yeah.
think more critically. So that's kind of my fear about the AI technology in the future.
Totally, totally. I love it.
Yeah.
And I think people, I don't know about the people you're working with, but if you're going to have to take a lab test every 3 months, forever because you're correcting something or the other as you're optimizing your life, for some folks, that might be too much.
Oh, yeah.
It might be too
Yeah.
expensive, right? Even if we're doing
Mm-hmm.
the blood chemistry and a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more. So it's just, I don't know what the future is either. I hope it's a good one, and
Yeah.
we'll find out when we get there.
You'll
Yeah.
So
find out.
yeah, let's get to, well, we have a few years before Neuralink is live, so let's
Oh my
live
gosh.
human existences until then. Let's get to number five, which is the fifth mistake that you see folks making in the health optimization space. And you talked about eating the same foods every single day of the week, season after season. So I'm not sure if this has to do with seasonality or how you think about this and how you explain this. So I'm curious.
There's so many things to think about. So I'll just do a quick thing and I'll let Renee take over. But I like to give the analogy of exercise. If you go into the gym and you do the same exercise every single day, every day of the year, what kind of results do you think you're going to get?
Flat.
Yeah.
Our bodies are meant to adapt through stimulus, and hormesis, your audience knows about good stress. And so we do have to change the stimulus so the body has something to respond to. That, and then also nutrient diversity, is key for a strong gut microbiome, which is essentially leading the show. The more inputs, positive inputs we have in the gut microbiome, the more our body has to work with. So those are kind of like the high level things. And then we can zoom into cycle syncing, seasonality. You want to take that one, Renee?
Yeah, I think, and it's hard. I know it's harder in the winter, but especially in the summer, like take advantage of the farmers markets. Can you go and pick a vegetable you've never eaten before, or pick something you don't even know what it is and look it up online? The more new things we can get in, and especially when it comes to vegetables, I mean, no one would argue vegetables are bad for you. Fiber, antioxidants, vitamins,
Some people.
minerals. Oh, Dave Asprey, Dave Asprey, kale, kale, death by kale.
That's my
Um,
kale. Yeah.
but I mean, even the blue zones, they're all eating like a pretty wide variety of vegetables. And when you go to the grocery store, it's usually like the same 10 vegetables always. So if you can go to a farmer's market or like an Asian market, something that's a little bit out of the norm, and try something different. Because yeah, I think there is a little bit of that hormesis with different foods.
hmm I
Yeah.
actually love that. Yeah, you should have variety and just like we were in the hunter-gatherer days, we didn't have the same food for most of the year. We had like
Yeah.
seasons of when the crop would be ripe enough for us to eat. Even the fruits, they're ripest and this is a very interesting hypothesis, when fruits get ripe at the end of summer because nature wants you to get fat to survive the winter, right? To have the fat
Yeah.
reserves,
Yeah.
which is
I love
such a
that.
Yeah.
fascinating hypothesis that's been put together by a friend of mine now, or he's become a friend, but he's an expert, world expert in kidneys and also this area.
Oh,
Okay,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
so let's get into, I want to ask you a little bit personal questions, but these are very interesting ones in that, let's say that you had all the money in the world and that was not a problem. What would you do to optimize your life for health and longevity? What would you
Uh,
do all day? So let me repeat that. What would you
yeah.
do if money was no factor? You don't have to work a single day in your life. What would your schedule look like all day for you to optimize your life for health and longevity and just living a pain-free life and living a life full of vibrance and being healthy for very, very long? What would the morning look like? What would the afternoon look like? What would the evening look like? What are the things that you would do?
Well, I would definitely go to the park in the morning, like I already do. But I think I would come back and probably eat, and then I might go back to the park. I might just spend most of my day outside, and I certainly wouldn't be opening my computer. My computer is how I make money, and I'm grateful for it. It's amazing that I have the flexibility to work with people all over the world from Zoom, but I wish that I was outdoors more. And I just think that's the most powerful biohack, getting adequate light exposure, getting movement, getting fresh air, right? Our homes are so toxic. That's no surprise. So I would probably just start there. I would be out if the weather permitted, I would be outside. Or no, money was no object. I would just keep traveling to all of the climates where it was best to be outside, given the time of
Okay.
year.
Be out as much as possible. Okay, Renee?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd probably not live in Vegas. I think I would move. I love it here, but I would want to spend more time in nature, and Vegas is missing that big time. So my dream would be live somewhere where I can go out to the beach at sunrise, get
Ooh,
that
yeah.
amazing red light first thing in the morning, grounding on the sand and getting my feet in the water. And then some point in the day, go up into the mountains. So tell me some good cities where I can have beach and mountains, and then be up and do some forest bathing. Um, I think I would take a lot of notes from the blue zones.
Mhm.
So definitely more time in nature, but I would still need a purpose. And I think, especially in America, a lot of us drive our purpose to how we make money, which is fine. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe I would still podcast. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a great way to connect with people, but maybe podcasting in person. That's what I would do. I would fly all of my guests to wherever in the world I was and podcast live, because I love these conversations and just learning from other people. And
Okay.
yeah,
So a little bit
but
more nuanced than Lauren, who just wants to be outside all the time. Okay. Got it. All
Well,
right.
just to add on to that, ironically, if I had all the money in the world, I probably would spend less money on biohacking because I wouldn't be fighting all these modern, stressors,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
I do think
exactly.
there's some really cool stuff that maybe is awesome to explore if you have all the money in the world, like ozone and IV treatments and a lot of the regenerative beauty stuff is so cool. But I just think the basics feel really awesome.
Yeah. It'd be really interesting if all of us lived the blue zone lives, how much less we would have to do to optimize our health because all the counteracting that we have to do from the stressors in our life and
Mm-hmm.
from, waking up or
Mm-hmm.
going to sleep or having to work or being in traffic or smoking or, taking in the pollution in the air, not being
Yeah.
able to have the air come into our homes because it's too hot or too cold outside at certain times. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting what that might feel like. I don't think any of us are ready to live in the blue zones without having adequate money at the moment,
Yeah.
but that's certainly an aspiration long term. Okay, so let me ask you
Yeah.
this. This is the last question for both of you. How long do each of you want to live and why?
I don't know what the number is. I just know I don't want to be completely alone and I don't want to be suffering. And so whatever that point is where if everyone in my community has passed and gone on, I mean, hopefully I can make new friends, but, and I want to be able to get up and down off of the floor and out of chairs without too much pain. So whatever age that ends up being, I'm okay with.
Okay. So
Yeah.
being able to walk or take care of yourself and not suffering, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Renee?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I think in my mind, I kind of have 100 would be a great goal. But again, I want to be surrounded by friends and family. I want to be taking care of myself. I don't want to rely on someone else. And I think with the technology that we have today and that's coming, maybe that 100 will then be 120 or 140. And is it the longevity velocity escape theory? I think is what it's called.
Mhm.
Escape velocity, yeah.
Escape velocity. I mean, I'm 37 right now. So can you imagine where the health technology is going to be when I'm 100?
Yeah,
It might be
it's insane.
completely just easy breezy to be skiing down the mountain and hanging out with all my friends and family at 100. So, but yeah, health span has to equal lifespan for me. That's a definite.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that makes sense. There's schools of thought on how far this longevity escape velocity is. Some people are saying with the nanobots, it's going to be 2045. Ray Kurzweil, who is one of the most prolific and one of the best um, predictors out there of future technology and changes in society, he's been right about 94% of the time in all his predictions going back to 1980. He thinks we're about to hit that this decade by 2030. So
Oh,
they're
wow.
saying for the next 7 years, don't get hit by a bus. Just hang on for dear life for the next 7 years, and we got it from there on, which is
Yeah.
unbelievable and
Wow.
fascinating because there's again David Sinclair's lab, who I'm sure you guys know, they've made some big discoveries in a chemical cocktail that doesn't cost too much money. It doesn't require gene therapy, and you could just inject it like in a CVS, go get a shot that would rejuvenate all of your body for, back decades. And so presumably all of us could live in the body at the age of our choosing. So for me, I probably live in a 30-year-old body. A lot of women I talk to, they say, no, 25. That's a better age. Cool. Take the 20, right? Whatever. 25, 30, potato, potato. It's all good. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's it's not outside the norm. Well, it's not outside the norm, the possibilities that are out there with some of these changes coming. So I'm super excited for what's to come. Anyway,
How long do you want to live? But do you have an age in mind?
so
In
for
your
me,
30-year-old body, of
in
course.
my 30 year, well, if you as long as I'm happy and I have a purpose, like just keep going, right? Because the
Yeah.
world has so much, and if we're just talking about the world and the sensory information that we get from it, right? Why do we want to be here? Because we want to experience things, right? We want to
Mhm.
experience novelty,
Mhm.
cultures, food, I don't know, just being around new people, right? Friendships. And so if that's going strong, I'm happy, I have a purpose. Let's keep going. Let's go underwater, let's go in space, let's go do all the things.
Heck
But if
yeah.
yeah,
I
but
still
if you're
need to see
not,
all of Europe, but yeah, sure.
that's true. And there's like cities and countries and villages, so you have to go to a lot. It could be
Yeah.
endless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I
so
might want to be in a 25-year-old's body to do all that exploring overseas, but otherwise, I'm with you on the 30.
well, I think the both of you, what I appreciate about the both of you is that you totally look the part. I don't think you have any fat on your body at all, and you're helping other
Enough
folks.
for healthy hormones and healthy brain, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. So I think that, as people get into midlife and beyond, that gets challenging. And so you're definitely looking the part and doing the right thing. So keep up with that. And
Thank
as
you.
a ending to this, tell us where people can find you, how they can learn more about the Biohacker Babes.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say likewise, you are walking and talking the part. You aging backwards, my friend.
Thank
And
you.
we're just so happy to chat with you. But we have a podcast called The Biohacker Babes. We release on Mondays. And similar to you, we cover everything in the longevity and health space. And our mission is just to educate and empower people to take health into their own hands and break down some of these more complicated topics so people are not so overwhelmed by the space. And our website is thebiohackerbabes.com. And we're on Instagram, biohacker_babes. Anything else,
Yeah, I
Renee?
think that's it. Yeah. Yeah, I think
Okay,
just to add, I think biohacking is going to become a necessity. I think the three of us probably already feel it as a necessity to live in this world, but I think as our planet undergoes more toxicity and things like that, we're all going to have to be biohackers.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we're
yeah,
inspiring people here today to do so.
totally. And I'm super excited by the longevity and the biohacking worlds coming together. And
Yes,
Yes.
finally.
yeah,
Yes.
finally. And it's
Yeah.
going to be a huge industry and let's stay friends long term so we can, work with each other and be old and still, well, younger body but old and then still having things to do together. So, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
having us.
Yes, thank you.